The original idea actually came to me when I was sitting in traffic, much like my first book. So Los Angeles traffic is serving me well. But I thought, what about a story that goes back and forth in time between a mom and daughter when they're each 17? And I didn't know a lot about what else I wanted the story to be at that point. But slowly I sort of sunk into it. It was actually after I read happened upon an article online, a BBC article called "Do the Dead Outnumber the Living?" And it was about population growth and how many people there now are in the world today, over 7 billion, versus how many people have ever died. And somehow that concept stuck with me, and it gave me a way into Angie's character. She's the daughter. And I think she and I shared some of the same questions about what could possibly be my place in such a vast world. Well, I actually wrote each story separately. In the book, you cut back and forth between the daughter's story and the mother's story. So it's kind of like two parallel stories. But when I was writing it, I conceived them differently. It was easier for me to write one whole story and one whole story instead of going back and forth. So when it came time to turn in the book to my editor, I was like, well, I guess I better see if these fit together. And luckily they did, I think, because I'd had sort of pieces of each of them in my mind as I was writing the other. So there were little echoes between the past and the present. Something you would see in the past that would reappear in the present, and maybe the daughter, maybe Angie, wouldn't know exactly the meaning of it, but the reader would recognize it from the past. Yeah, so far it seems to depend on the book. With my first book, Cartas de Amor a los Muertos, I was working full-time and writing late at night when I got home from work, mostly. Staying up way too late. But it was sort of just me alone with the book, and I didn't really know if anyone would ever read it. Whereas my second book, I had already had the chance to meet readers in Argentina and Mexico and around the world, and to talk to a lot of readers. And so I'd sort of started to become a writer, and when I sat down to write my second book, it was actually terrifying, much more so than the first one, because I sort of didn't want to disappoint anyone. So I started out just having a word count that I had to meet every day, which is not a way that I'd written before. But it really helped me because I figured out, if you write every day, sooner or later you have a book. And I was sort of able to sink into the story that way, where, I would just tell myself, you just have to ignore the insecurities and keep going. And eventually the characters sort of became so real that I forgot about the rest. A novel has a lot more space for exploration, I think. Writing a screenplay is a very clear form. So with a novel, you can sort of take a left turn and explore another street. You can drive through a cul-de-sac if you want, just to look around, and that can be really valuable to the story. But with a screenplay, you generally want to have a more linear drive forward, just because of the way the structure of movies work. But they actually inform each other. Definitely my experience screenwriting, I think, has helped me become a better novelist insofar as creating forward momentum in the stories, I think.